Colonel Chris Hadfield from the Canadian Space Agency, and we have an opportunity today also to talk to Chris. He's also in Star City awaiting his turn to perform a long-duration stay aboard the International Space Station. Chris, thanks a lot for joining us today.
My pleasure, Kyle. Nice to talk with you again.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you too. I know you're anticipating this greatly. Obviously, you've flown 2 shuttle flights, and your most recent one was quite a ways back. But I was looking through your resume, and you might as well have flown a lot of space missions between now and then with all the activities that you've been working on between STS-100 and now. But you've got to be looking forward to seeing what this station looks like since delivering Canadarm2.
Oh, I sure am. Yeah, as you said, I actually helped build part of the Russian space station on my first flight back in '95. So I've been coming to Russia for the better part of 17 years. And the last flight to have visited the space station when it was almost brand new, when it was just Expedition 2 was up there then, when we did spacewalks to build the big Canadarm on the outside. I've been doing all sorts of other jobs in between, working here in Russia and robotics and space station and such. But training specifically for this one, Kyle, for about the last 4 years or so, and now to be in the left seat of the Soyuz, so helping Roman fly the Soyuz, and then to be asked to step up as the commander of the International Space Station come March or so for the last 3 months we're there. It's just a wonderful flow, a wonderful thing to be part of, and yeah, if you ask, I'm looking forward to it. Yes, I am looking forward to this.
You know, I know that you've trained extensively for Soyuz. Has Roman given you and Tom any kind of advice on what it's like to actually launch on a Soyuz? I know you've probably talked to a bunch of other crew members that have flown as well, but what has he told you about it compared to, well, obviously he hadn't flown on shuttle, but you'll have that experience of comparing the two later. But what has he told you about the Soyuz?
Well, yeah, the training is incredibly in-depth. I spent 1 year basically here just going through the motion control laws and the systems involved in the Soyuz. So you become incredibly familiar and competent in all of the systems and understanding exactly how that vehicle works. And then for the latter year or so of training on it, the last year, a large part of it has been in the simulator, putting together all of those technical and theoretical things you learned, and now making it all happen in the simulator. And even in our final sim last week, where we did our last qualification with Tom and Roman and myself, we went through a whole profile from getting ready for launch, all the orbital insertion stuff, rendezvous, docking, undocking, emergency, come back, land on the Earth, all put into an 8-hour day. So the level of familiarity, the simulation is good, the training is excellent, and the level of familiarity gets really high. And as you say, I've of course talked to Roman about it, talked to lots of other people who've flown. I was talking to Kevin up on the space station, asking him what it was like. I talked to all the people when they come back. I've actually, as the chief of station operations, of course, I represented NASA at several launches and was out on the plains of Kazakhstan, the steppes, to help a crew as the Soyuz came back down under parachute and landed. So for a guy who's never flown in a Soyuz, I've spent a large part of my life trying to figure out how it's going to be. And with the expertise of Roman and the training that Tom and I have had together, I think we're ready to go flying.
Yeah, and of course, and I mentioned as a lead-in that you guys are basically, you just got certified, at least as Tom mentioned to me, you got certified to go into quarantine. You still have a couple of other steps to take after you get to Baikonur. You guys are heading down there on Thursday for your last couple of weeks. Can you kind of lay out what's in store for that last couple of weeks for you guys before launch?
The primary purpose, Kyle, is medical quarantine. We don't want to get a head cold. You know, something as simple as a head cold, like J.L. Creighton got back in '90 and it delayed a shuttle launch. You know, we need a quarantine. It's just smart after investing all this time to get a crew medically away from folks so that you don't catch a cold. But it's also a time to see our vehicle up close. And it's sort of like a dress rehearsal, but we get into our spacesuit, we get into the vehicle, we get down into our seats, and it's a chance to compare the real thing to what we've been training in the simulator. Find out the things that are different than the sim. Make sure everything's where we think it's going to be. Reach and touch and look at things. Make sure the seat and everything, it's all compatible. It's the right size. Really do that last final check in the vehicle, and we do that a couple times. Once when we first get there, and then again just a couple days before launch, to make sure that everything's exactly as it ought to be. And then, of course, we have some training, last-minute training. We want to keep ourselves healthy. We'll be exercising every day. And for the last few days, we'll have family and guests come down. A few folks make the trek all the way to Baikonur to watch the launch. And so we'll have a little bit of time, mostly through glass to keep the quarantine, but a little bit of time to visit with them, one last direct tag up with family, and then we walk out to our rocket ship and go.
It's fascinating, some of the things that you can do on the ground to prepare for space flight. You commanded a NEMO mission back in 2010 for 13 days or so, and then you even had an experience where you went up a little bit north of Vancouver, I guess shortly thereafter. There's two experiences that I guess that you're away from home. And of course, as a military pilot, you were probably away from home for periods of time. But it seems to me that going away for 147 days like you guys will be is, even though it's probably not as long as you've been away other times, it's certainly straight up. So it's a different environment. And it seems to be it's a whole family decision when you make these types of moves. Can you describe how you and your family, got together and talk through all this? Of course, that is your job, but how y'all came to the decision that this was the right thing to do, and how everybody's looking forward to it.
Yes, it's been something that I decided to be an astronaut, Kyle, when I was 9 years old, just about 10. So it's been somewhere in my mind basically as long as I can remember. And my wife and I have been together for 37 years, I think. So this is no surprise to my wife, to Helena, either. And in fact, it's not that this is some onerous task that is thrust upon us. This is instead, it's kind of the pinnacle of why we did all these things. It is where this has all been headed. This is the fruit of all of that labor. So for the family, this is a treat, not any sort of punishment. Also, my kids are grown. Helena and I have 3 children, and they live all around the world, one in China, one in Germany, and one in Ireland. So it's not like we come home and have dinner together every night. We keep a family Skype site open 24/7. So when my son wakes up in China, he can make a comment of, hey, I poured sour milk on my Cheerios this morning or something. And then during the day, everyone can, it's just as if we have a running family conversation. And so we really only get together face-to-face once a year. We choose Christmas as a time to get together. And so it's kind of nice. My whole family will come to Baikonur. We'll have Christmas a few days early, the big celebratory part of me getting in the Soyuz and leaving vertically, and then the family have a chance to just fit that into what has been our lives to this point. And once I'm in orbit, for everybody else, it's not that much different. I'll be phoning. I'll be sending emails, occasionally sort of Skyping. My wife will be taking care of the family as usual, and so I think everyone really recognizes the richness of it and the opportunity of it, and the fact that this is a natural extension of everything we've worked towards through basically our whole adult lives.
It's interesting the technology advancements, even probably when the station was fledgling, back when you flew on STS-100 and delivered the first major Canadian component, obviously the Canadarm2, that robotic technology that Canada supplied to the space shuttle program and now the space station program is just, it's amazing some of the things that hardware can do. And of course you were a big part of that, and you touched on your family being spread out, and but Canada obviously is home, and but because of your job, probably the U.S. is too, obviously, and can you touch on what it actually means to represent Canada? Because you're going to be the first Canadian commander when you transition to Expedition 35 next March.
Kyle, I think maybe folks in the States don't see spaceflight exactly the same because they're so deeply experienced at it, and because it's been something that's been going on a regular basis with American astronauts flying ever since Al Shepard back 50 years ago. And the shuttle flew 135 times, a big, glorious, vivid, powerful reaffirmation of what was going on. For Canada, even though we're a far bigger country than the U.S., our population is much, much smaller, and our space experience, it's just a handful of Canadians that have flown in space. And so when we fly in space, it's almost always a lot of firsts, just because we haven't done it much. And for this now experience to happen, for a Canadian to be trusted to command what is in effect the World Space Station, the International Space Station, I personally recognize it's Expedition 35, in between 34 and 36, and I realize, I understand the perspective of that. But for Canada, I am their very first spaceship commander, and it is an affirmation to my country of the trust and the respect and the capability that Canada has on a world stage and on a real cutting-edge technological stage, and something in the human experience that is in the parallel with all of the great explorations, the first explorers that created Canada as it is. So we see it in those perspectives with that light, and so do I, and so it's a big event. It's a big event in Canada, and I've got my job to do, and I'm focusing on that and taking care of the health of the crew and the health of the space station. But at the same time, it is a great big event for Canada and for my country, and there'll be a lot of people through the entire 5 months, but specifically during the major events, really closely watching and feeling a lot of pride in what Canada can do.
And then obviously with the capability of the station, you'll have opportunities to talk to folks back in Canada, media and such, so they'll obviously be following your flight extensively, I'm sure, throughout the whole expedition. I was after I talked to Tom yesterday, I was thinking about something he said, because obviously the reason the station is there is exploration and experimentation, but one of the things he mentioned was that during y'all's increment, I think he said something about 130 experiments will be either ongoing or new or finishing up. And I was doing, not that I'm great with math, but I was doing the math. I said, that's about an experiment a day, since you guys are going to be there for 147 or so days, which is just fascinating to the capability of the station from probably when you flew back in '01 to now, and what the station at least is capable of doing.
Oh, it's a tremendous tool. It's an investigative and exploring tool that we have built. Tom's right, about 130 experiments on board, everything from Tom and I doing ultrasounds of each other's hearts to see what happens to heart tissue and heart size when you go into weightlessness, through to the radiation environment, to, as you were saying earlier, to looking at how the inner core and mantle of the world work together through a model that you can do in weightlessness, through to the alpha magnetic spectrometer, gathering antimatter and dark matter from the universe, looking at the Earth's atmosphere. I mean, and also, and the real purpose of it, Kyle, to me, in amongst all that, is we are learning how to build spaceships that can take us further. How do you build a fan or a pump or a toilet or a food warmer or a bed or whatever, everything that we need, just like the earliest sailing ships. How could you build a ship you could trust to take you across the Atlantic, that you could really trust? And we're now learning, because you just can't simulate it properly. We're learning how to do all those things by being there, by building the International Space Station. And all of that stuff happens simultaneously, the experimentation, using the platform, and then using it as a real crucible and test bed to be able to go further. And the crews on board we're busy, and we're doing all those things, but at the same time, we're just giddily excited at the where it is in history, and the fact that we can be some of the people directly making these things happen. It's just wonderful to be a part of it, and Tom and I and Rahman are are itching to get on board and do the best we can for our particular 5 months.
Yeah, I mentioned that, obviously Roman is the Soyuz commander, but he's also been on the station more recently. Did he give you any insight into what his version of long-duration spaceflight was for Expedition 20 and 21?
Oh, sure, of course. I've spoken to everybody. I was chief of station operations for several years. I got to debrief folks at great length. I haven't had the experience myself, so I have a lot to learn, but I've really worked hard to try and talk to the people that have done it, understand the highs and the lows, the natural cycle. Like running a marathon. You talk about the wall and then how the body feels and how the psychology and the physiology of it goes. Same sort of thing on station. Having the cross-section of experience we have with Tom, having done 3 spacewalks and been up there while Roman was up there spending 6 months, and myself having been to a couple space stations, and joining into Kevin and Oleg and Yevgeny's crew, it's a really good, smart way that we've developed of how to train crews, how to select and put them together, and then how to get them on board so that they can pass the experience on from crew to crew and have a good, healthy progression. And so, yeah, I've been tapping Roman's skills, but everybody I talk to try and make sure that we'll be as successful as we can.
Yeah, it is a pretty unique position, as you reminded me that you personally have been to 2 different space stations, and you'll have an opportunity to compare this one in its essentially finished state to what it was when you went to Mir on STS-74. That'll be a very unique insight into what you think in terms of how you live, because you were on there enough to orientate yourself to that environment rather than a more of a closed environment of a shuttle or a Soyuz.
Right, and my last 2 flights, Kyle, as we undocked and left, I just had a great pang of desire to stay in each of those space stations. On Mir, we were just there a few days, and what an incredible early space station it was. It's like looking at an early sailing ship or an early airplane or an early car. Just, nothing's perfect, but it's the best they knew of then, and by combining the shuttle's capability with it, really learned a lot about how to build space stations. And I felt the same way as we backed away from the International Station last time. And now, luckily, that pang hopefully will be answered, and I'll have a chance not just to come up and dock and spend a few days and do something, but to get up there, dock, spend a few days, and then spend a few months. And yeah, I count myself very lucky to be able to do this at this stage.
Well, let's see, Kevin and Oleg and Yevgeny have been up there now for 41 days aboard the station and 43 days now in space. But how often do you guys get to talk to them? I assume you'll have another opportunity before you launch as well to talk to them, and what do you guys actually talk about when you do get together?
Well, we email back and forth, and Kevin calls on a regular basis. I was actually standing in line in Starbucks in Moscow, Kyle, and Kevin sent me an email, and the question was, "Hey, what type of coffee do you like?" And I thought it was just funny and ironic that I was standing in line in Starbucks and I got an email from the space station because Kevin's going through the coffee inventory on board, and it has to be all pre-mixed. And so he's go, okay, we got some with cream and sugar and some with just cream and some with just sugar and some black. And so I just sent him a note back saying, hey, I'm in Starbucks and I just prefer my coffee black. And he said, great, because Tom likes it, with just milk, and I like it with milk and sugar, so perfect. So that's the type of thing you talk about, is the little stuff. What sort of clothes do you like, the wet shave or do you want a dry shaver? Can I set your stuff out for you? We'll have your sleeping quarters set up, and I've got your food divvied up. And he's trying to, make the place ready for us when we arrive there in a couple weeks. And also, the key stuff of the stuff that we need to know when we get there and how we're going to spend the first few days of adaptation. Kevin's being a really good commander, getting all that stuff ready for us right now. And there'll be a big learning curve at first, of course, for the first few weeks. But all of us, I think, not just Tom and Roman and myself, but all 6 of us are looking forward to when we're up there. We've moved in, we're adapted, and it's a real functioning group of 6 people making the place really sing.
Yeah, it was actually a great setup for what I was going to ask you next, because of the personal part of it. Obviously the experimentation and the work that you're doing up there is most important. But, there's a balance that you have to strike in your life, whether you're in space or on the ground, and that includes, the fun things that you do, the work that you do, and you're going to be able to do that all in one location. And although obviously the station is quite large, it is really one location. And I know one of your passions is music, and I talked to Tom because I saw in his bio that he plays guitar also. So I asked him, I said, are you guys going to have a little concert up there, a jam up there? He says, I think there's only one guitar, but we're going to try to work something out.
We'll be passing it around. I play in two bands right now. I have for years. I've been writing and playing music my whole life. A song that my brother wrote for my first space flight was actually arranged for the Houston Symphony, and they asked me to come and sing that song a few times with the Houston Symphony. So music is a big part of what I enjoy doing here on the surface of the Earth. And I brought a guitar to the space station Mir, in fact, back in '95, and spent a while playing and singing and just having a normal collective human experience with the other people living up there on Mir. And it'll be an important part of living on the International Space Station as well, writing music, playing the songs we know. I worked with the lead singer from a Canadian band called the Bare Naked Ladies, a guy named Ed Robertson, and we've written a song that we're recording on board station and on the ground that will be in schools all across Canada this year. To me, art is really what sets humanity apart, and our desire and necessity to express ourselves through all of the different art forms. They've found bone flutes in caves from 50,000 years ago. People were making music. So the expression of emotion through music is fundamentally important for people. And it doesn't matter if you're in a cave in Macedonia or if you're on the International Space Station. So Ramon's a guitar player, and he's played in a rock band, and Tom's a very good classical guitarist, and I play guitar and sing. So it's not the main focus of what we're doing up there, but it's definitely going to be an important part of what happens. And I'm really looking forward, Kyle, to floating weightless next to the cupola window, playing that guitar up there, songs that I love, songs that I've just written, and really trying to help understand the experience through that special language that I love so much of music.
Well, you don't have to answer this, but I don't know what would be more nervous, singing in front of the Houston Symphony or launching on a rocket. I'm not quite sure about that one. One last question before I let you go. I know you also, between flights, you served as Capcom, and of course we're here in Mission Control right now watching over all the station operations. And I know serving as a Capcom gave you an opportunity to see what the flight control side of the business is like, and a team, in the case of the ISS, obviously teams all over the world supporting 3 or 6 people up on that station. And I know you probably had some words that to that effect of how you guys are trained and supported for these long flights.
Yeah, I was a Capcom for 25 shuttle flights in a row, Kyle. I was NASA's chief Capcom for 4 years, and in the late 90s, and just when we started building space stations. So I learned a tremendous amount in that job, and I really recognize that we count on that team with our lives 24/7. The space station could not be operated autonomously. We need all that expertise on the ground to watch over it. It's just too complicated a place and structure. I was lucky enough to, when I was at Capcom, that a couple of the young guys in the room were Tony Sacacci and Chris Adelin, who are now my 2 flight directors. Well, Chris is the lead flight director for Kevin's increment as Commander Expedition 34, and Tony will be the flight director, the lead flight director during the second half, when I'm commander of the station during Expedition 35. So the 3 of us have a long history together, and all of us understand absolutely how much we rely on the expertise and the originality and the ability to communicate of all of those people around the world in the control rooms all around the clock. And I'm pleased that I had the chance to do those jobs and to get to meet those people. And we will do our best on orbit to fulfill their plan every day, to try and get everything done, to keep the experiments going, and to hand over the keys to the station come springtime with the vehicle as healthy and thrumming away and working away as we possibly can.
Well, I know we're all looking forward to you guys getting up there and hearing about your experiences, and I really do appreciate you taking time out there in Star City on your last couple of days in Moscow and before you head down to Baikonur. So, Chris, good luck, and you have a great flight and mission. And again, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks, Kyle. I will take all the good luck I can get.
All right,
nice to talk with you again.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.